All right, Kurt, can you see my screen okay?
I can.
All right, great. Thank you. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Reversing COVID-19 and Learning Loss. Today we are going to be sharing with you a lot of different things that customers are doing to stem learning loss right now. I did want to quickly introduce Kurt. Kurt is the National Director of Special Education at Let's Go Learn. And my name is Richard Capone. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Let's Go Learn. Just 2 minutes about Let's Go Learn. So we've been doing data-driven personalized learning since 2000. When we started Let's Go Learn, we wanted to create tools that help teachers, right? We wanted tools that actually make a difference and answer the question of why is the student struggling or why are they doing well? And since then, it's been amazing. We've moved into math and reading. We have online instruction. We are now really focused on supporting special education departments. Kurt joined us a couple of years ago, and he's really allowed us to take our products to the next level in terms of supporting special educators. Today's webinar, we are going to first just talk about a little bit about COVID-19 and learning loss, really briefly, just to sort of analyze some of the metrics there. And then we're going to start talking about ideas from schools and what they're doing right now to the fall to stem learning loss. And we have a lot of great ideas, so we're going to spend a lot of time sharing those with you. And then we're going to do a quick demo of our platform and show how we can support a lot of those initiatives. And finally, we'll open it up to Q&A. So it's going to be a very fast-paced webinar. We're hoping to give you lots of good ideas because we know right now is very, very critical to do your planning up front. All right, so I'll go ahead and begin. So first of all, understanding learning loss. There are many factors, and I just want to briefly go through those. So first of all, with COVID-19, there was absolute loss of instructional time. We know that schools closed down, you lost instructional time. The next piece here is loss due to decrease in sustained topical learning. If you're not doing math every day, you lose some momentum, right? And that's another factor involved. Decrease in teacher effectiveness. We know that not all teachers were as good as using Zoom or teaching remotely. They had to learn that, and so there's a learning curve. The other factor is decreased student motivation, right? We know about that, as well as teacher motivation, it could be. The next 2 points deal with special education. Decrease in delivering personalized learning. SDI really suffered in a remote or a hybrid environment, and it took time to sort of combat that. And finally, the increased difficulty of progress monitoring. Now, progress monitoring is a real big part of special education or tier 2, working with students, and that is something that really suffered during the last 6 months or a year, I should say. With learning loss, we know that normally the trajectory is to do 1 year's growth in 1 year time. But with COVID, we had a slide, and that means that now we need to accelerate our learning to catch up. So over the next year, we really have to learn 1.5 to 2 years in 1 year time. And this is what we're going to talk about today. What are some of the ideas that schools are doing? How can they accelerate intervention to close that gap? So it is a very daunting challenge, right? When you lose so much time, you can't just go back to status quo. We have to accelerate. All right, so these are the top ideas coming from schools right now. So the way we got these ideas is right now we're doing a lot of planning because we are a data-driven personalized learning company. We are working with a lot of existing customers as well as new customers, and we've brought together all these ideas into this webinar. So it really organizes into 4 key areas, right? Program level planning, classroom reorganization, external resources and technologies, and training and communication. So we broke these ideas into these 4 areas. So first of all, in terms of program level planning, start early planning for summer school and ESY right now, right? This is sort of a no-brainer. Take your best administrators, take the best programs, plan on having a bigger summer school, make it better. And most of our customers are actually planning right now. Another idea that's come up is expanding your fall review period. So a lot of schools normally do a couple of weeks of review in the fall, but we have some customers now who are saying we're going to make this a 4-week or 6-week formal period, and it's almost like building in an intervention at the beginning of the school year. And so depending on the customer, they may be actually shortening their semesters by 3 weeks each if they're going to have a 6-week review period at the very beginning of the year. But this is an interesting idea. The other thing is, you're going to need to do a deeper gap analysis of your students. So you have to be realistic. Can we do this in the spring? If you do spring testing, is your diagnostic data going to be accurate? Some students are still remote. Some students may not be testing as well remotely. So that's something to consider. Some schools are saying, well, the spring data is still going to be suspect. So we're going to make sure that in the fall, the beginning of the year, right away, we do a very, very deep and accurate diagnostic assessment. So again, it's being realistic with your own organizations and deciding what you want to do. Expansion of tier 2 pullout. So a lot of customers have tier 2 programs, and so now they're looking at how can we expand our tier 2 to be bigger, right? Sometimes it's hard because a pullout program isn't always easy to do. Can they put some of that tier 2 within your current classroom, right? Within tier 1. So that's another idea as well. Another idea, I like this one, was expansion of tutoring. So a lot of communities have boys and girls clubs or YMCAs. And so we see some people talking now and figuring out how can they partner with these YMCA or boys and girls clubs and really work together. Can they end up using after school programs? Can they invite these boys and girls clubs and YMCAs to maybe have a program on campus after school? And so this is a great option as well, and we're seeing some expansion here. All right, the next one is classroom reorganization. So the first idea is flipping the classroom. So this is, let me qualify a little bit. So let's say you're a school and you already have flexible Fridays, or you have one day a week where you're doing flexible grouping. So the idea is to add more flexible grouping. Maybe it's now 3 days a week of flexible grouping and 2 days of the whole class. And so that's another option. Mixed age grade rotational classes. This is an interesting idea. If you know you have 4 classes of 6th grade students in math, maybe you do a rotational with the 7th grade class. Maybe you do it by subject. If you know a lot of students are struggling in fractions, maybe for 2 days, certain teachers are working with the lowest students in fractions, another group of teachers are working with some students in the middle, and another teacher is working with students in sort of a on grade range. And so the idea is start using different types of rotations. Don't just keep students in the same class every day. What can you do to be creative? And a lot of this will come out of PLC meetings where grade levels are looking at saying, hey, what's the mix of our students and what are some of the problems we need to deal with? But this is an interesting concept to think about, and we see this happening right now too. Add personalized learning time. So here's another great idea. Some schools are actually creating an extra period. Why not take 5 minutes off each period and create a separate period and call it personalized learning? We know students need personalized learning, and so in this period, they can work on what they need to. So if somebody's behind in math or someone's behind in ELA, or it could be something else, right? They have this time allocated every day. The other way of doing with this is maybe just allocating time within a regular elementary class. So it's really about talking to your teachers and saying, how can we get more personalized learning time? Because we need this in order to close student-specific gaps. More student contests. We know that when students are motivated, they perform better and they do better. So having more contests, taking some of the best ideas of your teachers and schools and sort of making that district-wide is a great idea. And so I think we've been trying to work with a lot of our customers too on how can they set up better contests. Expand project-based learning. So if you have project-based learning already going on, consider expanding it, right? So again, some of this, what we're talking about is taking some of these ideas that are already working in the classroom and expanding it, adding some new ones, but these are some of the top ideas that came out of our meetings recently. All right, the next topical area is external resources and technologies, right? So examine what technologies you're using, what tools you're using today, and grab the ones that are working and expand on those. I mean, I think that's really important. It is definitely hard to always start brand new programs. So if you have something that's working well, take that and try to expand it. Shift to diagnostic over summative only assessments, right? This is really, really important. A lot of time testing has been driven by administrators, and it's summative focus, meaning it's really for them to know which schools are struggling. But the problem is summative data does not break out into be diagnostic. And now it's really important to choose diagnostic assessments over summative, because diagnostic data guides instruction, guides individual attention, and it can be rolled up to be summative. So now is a good time to consider what assessments you're using. We even have some schools who've said, you know what, our benchmark tests that come with our core materials are not very useful. We're going to not even use them, because if I have so many students who are below grade level, it doesn't tell me much if every one of my benchmark tests is coming out at 10% or 20% proficiency or percent correct. It just tells me all my students are below. So again, because time is valuable and you may not have time to do too many tests, you got to think, which test do we really want to stick with? So this is something that's important to think about. Mathematics, right? I've seen a lot of times schools will create tier 2 math programs, and they take all the students who are behind and they put them into pullouts, but they think one teacher can just teach, 30 kids or 15 kids who have lots of different gaps. You really need to go personalized when it comes to mathematics. I think people need to realize this. And what we're seeing is more and more customers are saying, yes, we're going to go more personalized learning for tier 2 math. That's an important thing to realize, just because students don't fall into these neat groups like an ELA, which is decoding or language-based or comprehension strategies. In math, the gaps are all over the place. Another one is to standardize on tier 2 ELA program. A lot of times school districts are using 10 or 15 different interventions in ELA. So try to standardize on a few and make sure you can support your teachers in those. Finally, the last point here I'm adding is we're seeing a big move in special ed departments where they are no longer just going to rely on the general ed assessment that was adopted for the entire school. Like something like a MAP is that's a accountability test. It doesn't work well for special education. Or maybe there's a screener that was adopted for the school district, and now special ed is expected to use it. That doesn't work, especially in this era when so many students are behind. You need to really start saying, what tools can we adopt for special education? All right, the last area here is training and communication. Here's some interesting points. 3-level teacher training, right? Professional development. Now, it used to be in the past when you want to do a district training, it was very hard logistically. What site do we have it at? How long is it going to take teachers to drive over from some of the farther schools? Oh no, we have to have 3 different districts trainings because our district is so large, right? It's really spread out. But now with Zoom, what we see is you have a district training and it's on a Zoom, and then sites have their individual breakout afterwards to help operationalize what they just learned from the district. And then you have a third one, open office hours. So this way, further, if some teachers need extra help, you have open office hours, and the way you staff that is you take your top teachers across the district. Maybe you have 2 or 3 teachers who love Google Classroom. Well, now you don't have to worry about it. You create a Zoom open office hour, and those teachers, so the district has their Google Classroom training, and then the sites talk about what they need to do on the second day of training, right? And then lastly, you have this open office hour staffed by lead teachers. This has been a really successful PD model that we've seen lots of our customers do right now. All right, next thing is training students in weekly goal setting. So a lot of customers have been doing, student goal setting, and maybe it's certain schools or certain go-getter teachers who do it, but make this a district-wide initiative. Train students and schools on how to get students to set goals weekly. It could be, very, very specific. This week, I'm going to learn how to add fractions on like denominator. I'm going to learn long vowel, and I'm going to learn my 3D shapes. So, consider how you can take this to the next level. Because again, if you can get those students engaged, and not have intervention happening to them, but have them actively involved in their own learning, this is a great way of closing those gaps. All right, next thing is establishing district PLC standards and training PLCs formally. So this is interesting. From my experience, a lot of districts have PLCs. They all say, yes, our schools do PLCs, but they're very informal. And so this is a great opportunity to say, look, especially because the stakes are so high, we're going to create some district level PLC standards, and we're going to roll these out to our schools. Maybe if you don't have a very formal program, maybe you go to some of your top schools that have implemented PLCs well, and you get those principals to help take what's worked for them and roll that out to the rest of the district. But I do think this is important because I've seen a lot of poorly implemented PLC standards, and so I think it's an opportunity to beef this up. All right, the next thing is instructional leadership. A lot of schools, you have your principals making plans, so they're coming up with their site plans right now or in the spring, and they have to have it ready for the fall. But the problem is most of these plans are summative goals. I want to improve the performance of my students on our state test, right? On math and reading, blah, blah, blah. But you should really be shifting to making their goals instructional objectives. So I have a high ELL population. My goal is to improve students' math abilities in measurement and geometry, because those are very language based. And we know if they have weak measurement and geometry, vocabulary and math, it hurts the rest of their math. So it's something like that. Be getting more detailed. And this is, I think, a big initiative has always been to make principals more instructional leaders. And a great way is simply to saying, this year we're changing the objectives that they need to come up with. They no longer are going to be proficiency goals or benchmark goals. They're going to be instructional objectives. So I like that last one. We've been working a lot with different administrators on trying to beef that up. Okay, so that's sort of the top tips there. Oh, actually, one more. I'm sorry. Teacher collaboration with parents to create individual student learning plans. This is an interesting one too. And if you're worried about time about doing this, you could say, well, that's really hard to do it now, to do it in the fall. But it's something you could start now, right? So if teachers have good data, you have good tools, starting to collaborate with them and saying, hey, look, here is a report on your child. This is what we're concerned about. These are the areas we're working on. And this is a great way to get the parents involved as well as the student, and to really start setting goals on what you want to do to help close those gaps. So that one is an interesting one as well. All right, Kurt, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks so much, Richard. Appreciate it. Excited to be here with all you guys. One of the first things that Let's Go Learn really addresses is the issue of equity. And in the schools, quite often, special ed may not get what all of regular ed does. Certain children don't always get the same as others, whether it's district to district or intra-district. And one of our goals is to ensure a certain level of equity among all students. And by personalizing and individualizing all of our instruction, we're able to ensure equity and access for all children. They all will get the same level of quality instruction, quality analysis, quality diagnostics, and this is really creating a level playing field for all children. Next. So here what I want to talk to is our process. And what's really interesting is we focus in both special education and regular education, but our belief is that the special education process isn't only good for special education, it's perfect for regular education. Now, when we started special education back in 1975, we didn't have the technology we have today. So the idea of truly individualizing education for all children was something we really couldn't fathom because, again, we didn't have the technology to do it and we didn't have the manpower. But now with technology, adaptive learning, and all of the technology that we have, we now are able to individualize instruction for all children. And so let's talk about the process. When we first get to work with a child, we're going to diagnostically assess that child and find out what their needs are in reading and mathematics. Now, what's really important about this is a lot of RTI approaches will tell you that the child struggles to read. You know, you give them a curriculum-based measure for 1 minute and it tells you that they can read 60 words in a minute. Well, any good teacher can tell you, well, I knew that kid was struggling to read, that's why we're assessing them. What you need to know is why and where so then you can get in there with the how. So what we do is we determine right away, what are the kiddos' deficits? Is it in fractions? Is it in decimals? Is it in phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, comprehension? Where is this kiddo really struggling? What we're then going to do is we're going to take all that data and we're going to make some instructional decisions about that child, where we need to put them, where we need to start, and how we need to support them. Then what we're going to do is we're going to begin instructional support and personalized instruction. So what our system does, and I'll discuss that in a minute on the next slide, but it's going to create instructional paths for each child. So it's going to take their deficits and then create this instructional path with at least 60 lessons. So it's going to be customized for that child. Now, as the child is learning and progressing, the instructionally embedded assessments will assess their progress. But we also have a formative assessment engine that you can pull up. So let's say it is a special needs child and they have an IEP and you have annual goals. Well, you can progress monitor those annual goals as much as you want with our formative assessment engine. So what we believe, again, is what's best for special ed students is also best for regular ed students. So let's go to the next slide, if you will, Richard. So let me just kind of explain how our system works. If you look at the top left corner, you're going to see diagnostic assessments, and you'll see Dora and Adam. That's our K-12 reading is Dora. Our K-7 math is Adam. And then when we get into pre-algebra and algebra, that's DOMA, pre-algebra and DOMA algebra. We also have formative assessments in ELA and math. Now, what happens is once we assess children diagnostically, all of that data goes into a data management system where the system analyzes the data and creates reporting for the child where they are and how to make instructional decisions, and also separating the children so you can make in-class decisions. But it also creates personalized learning paths. So if the child is really struggling in phonics and phonemic awareness and vocabulary, well, you're going to get a path strong in those areas. And so it's going to give you 60 lesson plans that will give you the full year of instruction. And here's the other thing, as the formative assessment updates the system, it's going to update your learning path. So as their needs, as you improve on their achievement, and let's say you get their comprehension up to grade level, but not vocabulary, it's going to adjust that learning path. So it's a really revolutionary approach. Next, please. So let's talk a little bit about RTI, or I know what's become more common is MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports. And let me just kind of tell you how we fit. We work with a number of districts who sometimes we start in special education and then we move into doing their RTI MTSS, or we start in the MTSS and then they want the data for their special needs children and we move in there. So we work collaboratively, and the real power of those two things is that you have consistent data, and it's data that makes sense across the board, and we use grade equivalence. So you can always tell where a child is in any given area, and again, we have equity of data. Now, what we're going to do in Tier 1 is we're going to diagnostically assess the child. Now, what we're going to see is we're going to see the swelling, not of Tier 1. Tier 1's not going to really swell, but Tiers 2 and 3 are going to swell, because with learning loss, as we screen kids, what's going to happen is we're going to see more children needing learning support and having learning loss going into that Tier 2. So Tier 1, we're going to assess 3 times a year, and we're going to do the full diagnostic, and that's going to basically screen out a number of children. They're going to move into Tier 2. Now in Tier 2, remember, each of the tiers, it gets more progressively intense with instruction. So what's going to happen in Tier 2, we're then going to plug in our LGL Edge instructional series, and those kids are going to get learning paths. And then let's say, it's Tier 2, so we're not going to overdo it, but let's say we're going to do it 2 days a week, maybe even 3 days a week. And that's Tier 2. Well, you're then going to have more children advancing to Tier 3 than we've seen in a very long time. So then those children go to Tier 3, and let's say that is pre-special education. For now, we'll just say that's what it is when you're really getting close. We go to Tier 3, and then what we're going to do is we're going to increase, again, the instructional path, and we might go to 4 to 5 days. Now, inside of each tier, we, of course, have what the teacher is doing. So we're going to have whole group instruction. We're going to have differentiated learning plans. We're going to have separation of students into groups. We're going to have that small group instruction. and then we're going to have our personalized learning. So there's an awful lot going on in these 3 tiers. And Richard, I know you work with a number of districts with this model. Is there anything you want to add?
I just want to add, well, you know, the big thing is that it's difficult, right? Because it's hard to address, especially in tier 1. I think tier 1 is an area where we tend to have a lot more students. And like, for instance, if you're a school district that has 25 to 40% proficiency in math, technically, you know, 60% of your students could almost benefit from a tier 2. So one of the problems with this model is that we get a lot of pressure because we have to address individualized learning within tier 1. So that's the only thing I would say. And that's where a lot of those ideas we presented, they're ideas on how do you logistically do that. Sometimes it could be summer school, it could be front loading in middle school with more intensive instruction. So there's a lot of logistical things that go into this. And this is where, you know, when you have good data, when you have a good platform and good options, it allows you to be creative and figure out how do we deal with this.
Great. I'm done with this slide if we want to move on.
Right. So I think we're just going to show you some stuff right now. And let me go ahead and okay, we're just going to show you 5 minutes of our system, and then we're going to do Q&A. All right, so right now I am logged in to a teacher's account, and I wanted to show you how the platform looks and how the data looks more specifically. This is real student data, but the names have all been changed. And so it's interesting to see real student data. These are 5th grade students. And you can see right here, if we look at this looks like a typical, you know, summative math assessment. You got total score, numbers and operations, measurement, data, geometry, algebra. These are grade level scores. So we know this 5th grader, right, at mid-year 5th grade, 5.6, has a 3.76 total score. I could sort my class from high to low or low to high. But this doesn't help me as a teacher very much because it doesn't tell me what to do. So what I'm going to do now is break and dive into numbers and operations. When I go into numbers and operations for my class, I see this is numbers, place value, comparing and ordering, addition of whole numbers. These are all the subtests of mathematics, and I can see exactly where my students are at. So if I click on this, I see low to high, high to low. I can actually break it out and take a look at them by skills. So if I look at my class, I am now looking at my 5th grade class in terms of the scope and sequence of teaching place value. These students have mastered place value. This student is working on 1s and 10s. This student is working on 110s and 100s place value. These students here are all working on decimal place value. So what I just showed you just now is with 2 clicks of the button, I could instantly create small groups based on any topic. So I want to go into, you know, fractions. So this is what is really going to drive some of that personalized learning, depending on how you're doing it, whether it's a pull-out program, whether it's in class, whether it's flexible groupings, whether you're flipping the classroom. You have all these different abilities right here. When you're learning fractions, these students are learning the very, very beginnings of fractions right here. And these students up here are working on a much higher level, so word problems using fractions, right? Now, likewise, I could also just, if I needed to get a more detailed report, I could look at an individual student, Mindy, and I could run a report. And now with Mindy, I could see specifically, these are, again, the scope and sequences of what you're teaching in fractions, in mathematics. So here, for Mindy, place value, she's already learned thousands, 10,000, 100,000s. The double arrow tells me this is where she needs to work on next, decimal place value. Within multiplication, she's working right here, right? And so on and so forth. Now this report is, I think it's 12 pages. Now for special educators, what we've done, or for anyone who wants an individualized plan, we've taken all these rows of instructional points and we've created a special education report to help with IEPs. So if I come over here, I could say, well, for Mindy, her lowest score is in measurement, right? Before I talked about how sometimes students are low in measurement or geometry, and sometimes it's a language issue, right? So I want to go ahead and set goals for the IEP within measurement. So I select measurement, Initially, when I'm writing my IEP, I need to get my class. I need to know what my present levels are. So I can see Mindy, this is what she can do. She can correctly identify corresponding pictures of money. She can demonstrate understanding days of the week. She understands the thermometer. But in terms of instruction, I now want to set up my benchmark goals, my quarterly goals. So in terms of money, she's going to work on identifying the value of coins, a group of coins. She's going to work on correctly reading a thermometer. So now these are my instructional goals that I can target. So this basically, I pulled all these rows of data out of that 12-page report, and I can now use this for my IEP. So you can see the power here. I just, I'm not trying to do a really, really deep demo, but just sort of let you understand when you have an assessment that was designed at the skill and concept level, the data is so granular, you know that this is exactly what I need to work on for the student. So here's another example in reading for phonics. These students have mastered all phonics. Malia needs to work on beginning sounds. These 3 students need to work on long vowel, and this 1 student needs to work on multi-syllables. Instantly, in 2 buttons, I've clicked and I see my small groups. Now, I also know that these students really need to work on long vowel because they were given a set of items. They were given 10 items, and they got a non-mastery on the skill below. And they actually, I'm sorry, they got a non-mastery on long vowel, so I know I need to work on it, but they got a mastery on consonant blends. So anyway, so that's, there's lots of really, really interesting data here. And let me show you one other report before we open up to question and answers. So let's take a look at this student here. Let's look at the parent report. If you want to bring parents and you want to start implementing the parent recommendations where you bring them into the process, here's a parent report. How does Paloma read words? It talks about ability across high frequency words, phonics, and word recognition. How does she put it all together? How do they make meaning? We're going to look at a combination of vocabulary and reading comprehension. So we give them examples, we explain it, we talk about their profile. And then here we show the specific phonics skills they've mastered or not mastered. And finally, these are recommendations of what you can do at home. All right, so this is pretty powerful. Exactly what the parent could do. We even have sample lessons. So there's no shortage of data, and there's no shortage of operationalizing that data for your specific initiative. You obviously can't do everything, but what we try to do is we try to support the district by having data that works across all areas and reports that work for special ed, for tier 2, for general ed, for administrators. We have massive reports for administrators to roll up all this data, for principals to be instructional leaders. There's lots of data. I think that's it. I want to keep us on track. So why don't we go ahead, and I think the next thing is to go into Q&A. Or actually, I'll actually just stop presenting.
Yeah, hey Richard, I don't know if you see them yet, but there are a couple questions, and one of them was on PD. Can you talk a little bit about the PD that's offered to schools and school districts?
Sure. Yeah, in terms of PD, we offer virtual PD. We offer on-site when it's available and it's safe. And then we also have pre-recorded videos, so you can do it a la carte. And we also have online courses. So if you want to have teachers take courses and actually get a certificate, they can do that as well. And there's actually questions. So, and then not only that, it's not just about products. We also do a lot of training with administrators. I did a training with a school district on how to run a PLC. How do I use data for PLC meetings with math? So there's lots of different type of trainings, whatever kind you want. We have one of our largest departments is our customer success department, which is former teachers, and they all will work with the districts or schools on giving them the right PD.
There was another question on cost of the system, and I put my number and email into the chat box, so you can reach me at khewlett@letsgolearn.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I'd answer it now, but there's so many variations, and there are a lot of variables that impact costs, so it's just contact me individually, and we'll talk about it.
Great. And another one, is there a way to create custom assignments? I just looked at another question. So yes, and one thing I didn't show you is that, based on that assessment data, we create an automated course. But when I was looking at that list of students saying, hey, these 5 students need decimal place value, I could actually check that box and assign those students, just those 5 students, a decimal place value lesson. So it's pretty cool. And I can actually even assign Khan Academy lessons too, because we actually store links to Khan Academy. So I can actually directly apply what students need. As a matter of fact, you could even use it for scaffolding. So if you are trying to teach something, you're about to teach Pythagorean theorem, I can actually find out which students need foundational lessons based on the data, and I can assign those before we do our group lesson. So there's lots of ways to do custom assignments. All right, any other questions?
There is
Lily?
one more, Richard.
Sure.
Let me see. Is there a way to monitor my students taking the assessments as they are assessing remotely?
Yes, so that gets into, I'm not sure about the current customer who's asking that, but under the test management, there is a way you can do it, and you can see what the students, what they're doing, if they're in progress, if they finish assessment. We also now, because of the need for remote, and a lot of times nowadays classes are hybrid, so we are adding a brand new dashboard for the future, and we're actually building that over the next few months, which is going to allow them to see an actual dashboard, like what exactly are they doing, how many lessons have they completed, how many lessons did they do last week. So that's a big area that we're actually doing more development in. So that's a good question. All right, any other questions?
Is this an annual subscription? Can we use Let's Go Learn in summer school?
Yes, so normally we're annual subscription, but we do have a summer school licensing where it's a shorter period of time. So if you talk to one of our educational consultants, we can actually provide you with like a summer school quote as well. And absolutely, it's great. I mean, the summer school results are fantastic, because if you start with a diagnostic assessment and you give students exactly what they need, you can close gaps really, really fast. We had a summer school program that in 2 weeks, 500 students on average, they gained 0.3 years of math in the total score, right? Think about it, 0.3 years, which is 3 months, they did it in 2 weeks. And that was the average gain. And our math assessment has a 0.85 correlation to PARC and SBAC. So that was pretty amazing, yeah. So another question is, can the instruction be used in sort of a whiteboard setting or Zoom setting? Yes, the lessons we have, which I didn't show you, our lessons can be used on a whiteboard. So the teacher can actually pick an individual lesson, long vowel or multiplying fractions, and then they can actually present that lesson on the board. And all our lessons, actually, I didn't talk about it, but they do use music and animations and graphics, because part of our philosophy is, part of equity is making sure everyone can access that lesson. And not everyone could learn from Khan, because it's not very engaging. But students who struggle need that extra audio, the music that helps them learn, the animation that helps them visually see how to learn the concept. So that was a good question. Okay. Let's see, do we have any other questions, Lily?
I don't see any new questions, Richard.
Okay, so let me, all right, I guess that is it. We will thank you for attending. Sorry, I'm not sharing my screen properly. I'm having a problem with my computer, but you can always email help@letsgolearn.com, and then they'll connect you with the right person. You let them know where you're at. And also, we will be sending all attendees a copy of the of this presentation, and so you'll be able to get a video recording of it. And again, like I said, if you just email Kurt, he sent you his email address earlier, and also it's help@letsgolearn.com. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.